All right, welcome in everybody as we've got about a minute left to go between the Denver Nuggets and Sacramento Kings in their first game in the post-Michael Malone era. The Nuggets are up 120 to 111. There's about 55 seconds to go. We'll just kind of watch this last minute here, and then we're going to get into it because this has been a wild week. Christian Brown hits another bucket. He has been unbelievable tonight. We'll talk about him as well. And now there's a foul with about 43 seconds to go. But look, it looks like the Nuggets have this thing wrapped up. They are up 122 to 111 with 43.6 seconds to go. So welcome to In the Paint, Altitude Sports Radio 92.5. Dan Tanner here for reaction. Anything been going on over the last 72 hours that we should get into here on the show? It's been kind of a quiet past couple of days here in the Mile High City. Obviously, we're going to get into the big news of the week, which is the fact that Nuggets head coach Michael Malone was let go yesterday, and their GM Calvin Booth was also let go yesterday. Now, David Adelman is the interim head coach. He will lead this team for at least the remainder of the regular season and into the playoffs. David Adelman has been with the organization since 2016 or 17. So he's been with these guys for a long time. If it was going to be anybody on the staff to take over for Michael Malone, David Adelman was the obvious choice. Obviously, the son of Rick Adelman, who David in his pregame press conference, which I do have a clip of that we're going to play here in just a bit, was outstanding, I thought. And I'm not a huge press conference guy, like reading too much into it. But if that was any sort of job interview, he aced it. He was very clear, very direct. You can tell he's a smart guy. He knows the game, and it sounds like he's going to relate to the players very well. And the players know David Adelman. So this is something that, we'll see if it can provide a spark for the Denver Nuggets. But obviously, as the game winds down here, Michael Malone let go yesterday. The Nuggets are in the midst of a 4-game losing streak, although it looks like that's about to end. Sacramento just got an and one, Domantas Sabonis. It is now 122 to 113 with 34.4 seconds to go. So still not over, but the Nuggets look like they have this one in the bag. They just can't turn it over, and they should be fine in ending this 4-game losing streak. What's so wild about what has happened over the last 48 hours is the fact that after tonight, there's 2 games left in the regular season. And I remember on this show just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about how the Memphis Grizzlies fired their head coach, Taylor Jenkins, and just how crazy that seemed to do that late into the season for a playoff team. If you're heading into the lottery and you're not a playoff team, I mean, whatever. Fire the head coach whenever. But for 2 playoff teams to fire their head coaches with under 3 weeks remaining in the regular season is something that I never thought I would see in the NBA. And it just so happens that we saw it happen twice in the same season. So we'll get into the game tonight, but I did want to spend a little bit of time just sort of going over what we heard from Josh Kroenke yesterday in his interview with Vic Lombardi, what we heard from Nuggets interim head coach David Adelman in his pregame press conference, and what does this mean for the Nuggets moving forward here. The good news is, in his pregame press conference, David Adelman was very clear that he, and most importantly, the players in the locker room, believe that they still have a chance to do something special this year. Now, take that for what it's worth. Okay. I mean, I would have been surprised if he said anything different. I mean, they're a playoff team, okay? And he went as far to say that, it's not like we're out of the playoffs. We're going to be in the playoffs. And we have some very good talented basketball players on this team. We can be dangerous in the playoffs. How much of a spark and how much of a change can David Adelman, or just really the removal of not only Michael Malone, but also Calvin Booth, how much will that actually change things on the court? Now, I do think it'll change the dynamics in the locker room. And I want to be careful with all of the reports coming out, the alleged happenings, if you will, over the course of this season between Michael Malone, the players, and Calvin Booth. Because it usually in instances like this, it does take a little bit of time for all of the facts to come out. But we can only, and it's a final. The Nuggets just won 124-116. So congratulations to David Adelman. That was fantastic, and we're going to get into it. But what can change as far as the locker room goes and all that stuff we'll get into. But the reports coming out, I've seen a bunch of stuff. And one of the things that I think is becoming quite clear is there was a Cold War brewing between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. Those two rarely talked to each other. They had disagreements on players and minutes, which if your head coach and your GM aren't on the same page with that stuff, it just cannot work long term. And I think the Nuggets ownership saw that. I mean, clearly they did, because they fired Michael Malone and Calvin Booth with 3 games to go in the regular season. So clearly the Cronkies saw something that just wasn't going to work. Now, again, the interesting part is the fact that, why not just let it play out in this in this season and then do the firings and make the changes? Because Josh said yesterday with Vic, we were planning on making a change at the end of the season either way. And I figured what's best for the team right now, we'll just do it now. There was also a report that said that ownership was considering making a change around the All-Star break. But the problem was the Nuggets went on an 8-game winning streak. So it's like, how do we fire the head coach and the GM when we're in the midst of an 8-game winning streak? And if you remember at the time, I said it's great that the Nuggets beat bad teams, but it was just that. They played a stretch of games right before the All-Star break against basically all non-playoff teams. And then after the All-Star break, their schedule got much, much tougher. And they had gone 11-13 since the All-Star break. So I do want to get your thoughts. Please feel free to weigh in. I would love to hear your reactions and your feelings about the coaching change, the Calvin Booth being gone. But more importantly, where do the Nuggets go from here? Okay. I don't know if David Adelman, he might get a shot to be their next head coach. I don't see that happening. I think what ownership and the new front office will be looking for is a complete reset with the coaching staff. As much as I love David Adelman, and you've got Popeye Jones, Ryan Saunders, it is a very good coaching staff, and they've been together for a very long time. But if the locker room was getting toxic, which is at least just what we're hearing right now, then I do think they'll probably just clean house and bring in an entirely new coaching staff and a brand new head coach. But we'll see. And I hope at least that David Adelman does get a fair crack at the head coaching job, because I do believe he is destined to be a head coach in the NBA. I mean, he's a brilliant offensive mind. He's been running the Nuggets offense for the better part of the last 8 years. He's been the architect. Malone was always more of the defensive-minded coach. David Adelman was in charge of the offense. And as we all know, the Nuggets have had one of the most, if not the most prolific offense in the NBA over the course of the last 5 or 6 seasons. Now, when you have Nikola Jokic, it makes your job a little bit easier when you're the offensive coordinator of a professional basketball team. I get that. But there is trust and reliability and consistency there from David Adelman. So we will see as far as the new head coach goes. I have an idea for who I think they should go after for the general manager position. The head coach, I've still got to dive into because this is all just so fresh. And, I'm still processing Michael Malone, who was here for a decade, not being here anymore. I need to really dive in to see, what is the exact type of coach the Nuggets need. Do they need to go after another defensive coach? Because here's the thing. Like I said, Michael Malone is known more for being a defensive coach. And the Nuggets' biggest issue right now is they're atrocious on the defensive end. Now, I've said all season long, the Nuggets' main issues, at least on the court, I'm just talking on the court this year, their issues have not been coaching, in my opinion. It's roster. It's the roster. It's personnel. They're not deep enough. They don't have those athletic wings that can guard the perimeter like they did in years past with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown. They just don't have those guys, and especially guys that can come in off the bench and really be stoppers on the defensive end. They just don't have the personnel for that right now, unfortunately. Now, you could say Christian Brown, obviously he's in a starting role, but hopefully he can develop into an even better perimeter defender. I think overall his defense has been fine this year, but the perimeter defense as a whole for the Nuggets this year, I have been harping on all season long because it's been one of the worst perimeter defenses in the entire NBA. In fact, it might be the worst if we looked at the numbers. So it will be interesting. Now, the general manager, I've seen Hastings has floated this out there. I've been actually kind of monitoring this situation for a while now because I had a feeling that Calvin Booth was not going to be back next year. Michael Malone was a little bit more surprising. I did not see that coming, at least before the season ended. But I did have a feeling that Calvin Booth was going to be gone. Bob Myers, the former general manager of the Golden State Warriors, is a name that I think would be a great fit for the Denver Nuggets as their GM. Now, if you don't know who Bob Myers is, he was the architect of the Golden State Warriors dynasty. And he's a great basketball mind. He was actually helping out the Washington Commanders in the NFL with personnel. I don't know exactly what he was doing for the Commanders, but it was some sort of a player evaluation. So he's obviously a very smart, savvy dude. He knows how to build a winning roster. And he's done it with the Golden State Warriors. So that is a name that is very intriguing to me. I've seen a lot of people throw out Masai Ujiri out there. Why not try to bring him back? And I've even seen some people on Twitter throwing out, well, maybe they can go get Tim Connolly back from Minnesota. I would say the chances of Tim Connolly coming back and being the Nuggets GM or president is very, very low. And it's not because Tim left the organization in a bad way or there's bad blood between he and the organization. I don't think that's the case. I just think that the Nuggets just want to go in a different direction. Kind of the same thing with Masai Ujiri. Now, it's been a lot longer of a time period since Masai Ujiri was here as the general manager of the Denver Nuggets. I just think that at the end of the day, the Nuggets ownership is going to want to go in just a new, fresh direction. I really do think that is the case. Now, the key here is, and I do think this is important, and I really didn't ever see this as a possibility, and I would say that the chances of this happening are still very low. There's obviously been a lot of rumors floating around online. They do need to, I'm not saying they have to consult with Nikola Jokic on who they bring in, but they need to make sure that whoever they bring in coaching staff and front office executives is going to work well with Nikola Jokic, because there was a case yesterday, and I don't know if this is a big deal or not, truly, but Nikola Jokic's agent did post something on Instagram of odds of the next team that Nikola Jokic would be either traded to or leave for. Like I said, I think there is an extraordinarily low chance of that happening. Just knowing Nikola Jokic, knowing his personality. But I will say this, for as much grief as Joker gets as a guy who doesn't really care about basketball and it's a job to him, which it is because he's admitted as much, he wants to win. All of the, stay on parade or when is the parade? I need to go home. The job's done. We can go home now. All of that stuff. He is genuine when he's saying that, but he truly cares about winning. There's no doubt about that. So I will just say, I hope that the Nuggets are very cautious when bringing somebody in to make sure that Nikola Jokic is here for the rest of his career. Not even long term, just for the rest of his career. Nikola Jokic needs to be a Denver Nugget. There's no question about it. Everybody else, I've already said, and I might be changing my tune a little bit on Christian Braun because he is only in his third year, and he has been fantastic this year for the Nuggets. There's no doubt about that. But other than those two guys, if they do falter in the playoffs earlier than we're all hoping, they're gonna need to make some major changes. All right, we got our guy KJ on the show. Let's bring him in now. KJ,
yo,
welcome back to In the Paint. 4-game losing streak. I haven't even dove into the game yet tonight, KJ, because I've just been talking about what's transpired over the last 48 hours. And before I give you my thoughts, I just kind of want to get how you're feeling. How surprised were you about the news yesterday, and just kind of overall thoughts on what's transpired over the last 48 hours here?
Oh man, when we got the news, I was shocked like everybody else because, as many of you know who follow us on Altitude Sports Radio 92.5, the news broke on my show, and I was like, when Raj said it, I was like, dude, are you serious? And he was dead serious. And I looked at my phone and I saw the same alert that he got. I was like, wow. And dude, I am telling you right now, Dan, like at this current moment right now, I think it's like 10:40 something.
Mm-hmm.
At this current moment right now, Dan, I am still in disbelief. I've watched a full game of the Nuggets where they just beat the Kings, and I am still in disbelief. There's like this part of me in my heart or in the back of my mind, however you want to phrase it, that's like, oh, Malone's coming out of that tunnel at some point, right? But I know he's not coming out of that tunnel, man. And it's just, I'm struggling to kind of wrap my head around it, man, because this is like, and you've been in media way longer than I have, man. This is my 5th year in media as far as like TV and radio. I mean, there's nothing that comes close to what I just dealt with this week. I mean, this is by far the craziest moment I've ever dealt with in my career.
I thought the Mikko Rantanen trade was going to be like the big news story of the spring sporting calendar this year, winter and spring sporting calendar. That was just the appetizer. KJ, somebody in the comments said, I'm trying to find the comment. Sorry if I can't find it, but basically they said, and I agree with what they said. I believe it's our guy, Evan. He said, there is blame for Malone for this year. And I think if some of the stuff coming out is true, like he and Calvin Booth were essentially in sort of a Cold War. They didn't talk to each other hardly at all, if at all. They had disagreements on, Calvin wanted Malone to play the young guys. He wanted Jalen Pickett out there more. Malone wanted to play Russ. That's the kind of stuff where okay, I think that's fair to criticize Michael Malone and Calvin Booth for that matter. But I've said all season long, the Nuggets struggles on the court, in my opinion, KJ, we're not coaching. I've said all season long that it's a roster issue.
Mm-hmm.
The 3-point defense is not on Malone.
No.
The lack of depth on this team, that's not Michael Malone's fault. Now, you could put that blame on Calvin Booth. So there is fault to be had with Malone, but I don't think it would be fair to just say everything that's gone wrong with this team this year was on Michael Malone. I don't think that's fair to say. And let's not forget, KJ, like, this is still a very good basketball team who is going to be in the playoffs this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And David Adelman, we're going to play a clip here from his pregame presser. I don't know if you were able to catch it, but it was fantastic. He aced that interview. He said as much. He said, we're still a really good team and we expect to win. Like, we can still do something special this season. And the most important thing, KJ, he said to me was, he was like, I believe it, but the players in the locker room believe that. That was interesting to hear from David Adelman.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. And kudos to David Adelman for stepping up, man, and just being, I'm just going to be honest, he was being a man about it. He was like, look, man, this is what it is. This is what we got to do. This is what we have to accomplish. And, he's always had traits of being a head coach. He's had interviews in the past. I think he's a very liked coach here in town. He's a very respected coach around the NBA. And I think tonight was just the epitome of that, man. Like, tonight he let his players play. And in his pregame presser, he stepped up and answered every question. And I know he's going to do the same thing in his postgame presser, which I know we all look forward to listening to later. And it's just like, man, like, David Adelman, man, he gets it when it comes to, like, just letting the players be the players. And at the end of the day, it has been a player personnel issue all year, Dan. We agree 1,000% on that. But there are moments where I think as a coach, you do kind of have the ability to kind of either reel things in or throw the line back out there and kind of, let things kind of, simmer down for just a few moments. And I think if you're the Denver Nuggets, I think you got to pay attention to the little things. The little things right now, they mean way more than they ever have in this Jokic window.
Yeah, well, and I think that's why they ultimately decided to make the change, because I think ownership, Josh and Stan, looked at this and said, if we're living in reality, we've got maybe 5 years left of the Jokic window where he's Nikola Jokic. He could, who knows how long Joker's going to play. Will he be this good in 5 years? Probably not. He'll still be a really good basketball player. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I think they looked at this situation and said, we have 5 more seasons to try to win as many titles with the best player this organization has ever had. And I think that's why they ultimately made the decision. And, look, they didn't rush into this decision, okay? Malone was here for a decade. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I do think that's important for our listeners to understand. Like, this wasn't just sort of an off-the-cuff, like, sort of quick decision. This was very calculated and thought out. Mm-hmm. So now the question is going to be, do you think David Adelman will get a crack at becoming the permanent head coach, or do you think they're just going to go clean house and go in a completely different direction? My thought on that, KJ, and I'd like to hear what you think about that. I do think if everything coming out that we've seen is true, where there was toxicity built up in the locker room, I do think they're going to look at the situation and just say, you know what, it's probably best if we just start over with the coaching staff and obviously the front office and get fresh people in here, fresh ideas. And, do they go after a defensive coach? Because let's not forget, Michael Malone he's a defensive coach.
Yeah.
And they had one of the worst defenses in the NBA this year. So it will be interesting, the direction they decide to go. But what's really going to be interesting is if they falter in the playoffs this year. Okay, I want to preface that. If they do, they're going to have to make some major roster changes. There's just no doubt about it. Because like I said, I do think the on the court issues are because of the problems we talked about, the lack of depth. They don't have the really long athletic wing guys that can defend the perimeter. They don't. How long have I been harping on a backup center, KJ? All season long. They need to get a backup center. They need to be able to score the basketball when Nikola Jokic is not on the floor.
That's the goddamn truth, and that's been the struggle all season, Dan. And it even showed itself again tonight. A new head man in charge, and yet the bench still looked the same tonight. And I think that's kind of the epitome of where we are.
Well, KJ, honestly, just real quick on that, the bench actually, to start the second quarter, the Kings come out and hit 3 straight 3-pointers. They go on a 9-1 run, and it's just like, oh my God, like that's kind of what I was talking about. It's not coaching, it's roster. But
right.
But they actually kind of rebounded, and they allowed Jokic to get his full rest. He came back in with like 6 minutes and 15 seconds, so they didn't have to bring him back in with 9 minutes to go in the second quarter. So, okay. And then in the second half, at the end of the third, when Jokic goes out, they're up by 10, 93-83. And when he comes back in, they're up by 10. So in my mind, they did their job tonight, actually. That's all I'm asking for. Just keep it even.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way, Dan, because though they kept it even, it looked ugly. It was the ugliest keep it even I think I could have asked for.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. It didn't look pretty, but they kept it even.
Look, I think a lot of it was just DeAndre Jordan getting to the foul line, DeAndre Jordan alley-oop dunk, DeAndre Jordan getting rebounds, pushing the tempo, maybe a Peyton Watson layup here and there. That's essentially all it was just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And defensively, it was just enough to keep hair on your head. And, that's just where the Nuggets are. Now, to go back to your earlier point, Dan, I think this playoff run is crucial because I think, like you said, it will determine the fate of certain players. It will determine the fate of this coaching staff. It will determine what type of GM needs to come in here. I mean, we've all heard the rumors. Bob Myers, that's my guy. Yeah, I agree 1,000%, man. And again, I like other assistants around the league, but we'll say that as we get closer to the offseason. But nonetheless, a lot is riding on this playoff run because, man, I mean, the future of the organization is in the balance based on what happens here in the next, we'll call it 4 to 6 to 8 weeks.
100%. And I think the futures of Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. and maybe Aaron Gordon hang in the balance on what happens the remainder of this season as well. I do. Christian Brown, I floated out there the other night that everybody should be on the table if they falter besides Jokic. I'm kind of backtracking on that just a little bit. I was thinking about it. CB is only in his third year, and the way he's playing really the entirety of the season has been fantastic. And I do think it would benefit the team to stick with Christian Brown if this is the case. And again, this is all predicated on the idea that they falter in the playoffs earlier than we would like to see them. Okay. Now, if they for conference finals, things could get interesting. It's like, well, do they run it back? I don't know. In my heart of hearts, I don't see that happening. I obviously hope it does. It's good for us. It's good for the fans. It's good for everybody.
Yeah, right.
Being honest, I don't see that happening, and I hope more than anybody that I'm wrong. But you're right, man. Like, the future of Jamal Murray and Michael Porter specifically, I think, hang in the balance of what they do the rest of the year and into the playoffs. I do.
Yep, that's they know that, we know that. I think everyone knows that. We don't have to guess that anymore. I think Josh Kroenke making the move that he made, it was a sign that, listen, I love you guys. You guys have been great to this organization, but at the end of the day, I want to win more, and whatever it takes to get more out of this core or out of this team, he will do. And I think at the end of the day, I think Josh being forced to have to be a little bit more hands-on now. I think it will kind of force the sense of urgency in all of the rooms around Ball Arena to kind of go up a little bit. Here's a conversation we got into on our show today. How much of the Avs' success played a part in the Nuggets being in the pressure cooker?
That's a great question. And I actually have talked about this pretty recently on this show, KJ. I do think that the ownership group looked at what the Avs did this year, and they started this process last year. I do want people to remember that. They traded Bo Byram for Casey Middlestat.
Yep.
That was, a big piece. And then this year, they obviously get 2 new goaltenders, and then they just go bananas around the trade deadline. The Avs got better, and not only did they get better, they put themselves back into legitimate championship contention with what they did this year. Now, the fact that it happened in the middle of the season is wild. Okay, you hardly ever see a team have that big of a makeover in season, but they did it. And I thought Joe and Chris McFarland did a masterful job at that. And how much more confident, KJ, do you feel that the Avs could win the Stanley Cup this year than you did in November or early December? I mean, it's night and day.
Literally.
So I do think that, and here's what's so crazy about this. The Nuggets and the Avalanche are kind of on the same timeline, and they've been on the same timeline for a while. They're a young up-and-coming team with really good young players. They ultimately reached the mountaintop. They both won a championship. And then the big contracts kicked in. And both of these teams have gotten way too top heavy. And the depth just fell out of the bottom of both of these teams. And I think that the ownership group has really seen and understood that that is not a recipe for winning championships. When the Avs won the Cup in 2022, they were one of the deepest teams in the NHL. When the Nuggets won their title in 2023, it's not, I wouldn't say as important in basketball just because the rotation shrank in the playoffs, but they had 3 or 4 guys that were going to produce when they came in off the bench. They don't have that anymore. So I do think that they understand that they've got to, look, if the starting 5 gets a little bit downgraded, but the bench gets massively upgraded, I think that's a trade-off that the ownership group is willing to take.
I think so too, and I think it's a leap of faith that you have to take, because we talk about taking the pressure off Nikola Jokic, and I love the way that David Adelman spread out Nikola's minutes tonight. I mean, just did a masterful job, just not rushing, was being patient, letting the guys figure it out. But imagine if he could take Nikola out of the first and third quarters even sooner, because they actually have a big who can come in, do some things, take some of the pressure off of him. They have consistent shooting coming off the bench. You'll always have Jalen Pickett, and that's a guy who doesn't turn the ball over much, if at all, at times. And so you factor all of these things in. I think the Nuggets, with a move or two, would be able to spread, the love and the wealth out a little bit more. But the question then becomes, if you're Josh Kroenke and company, do you trust that if we move on from Jamal and MPJ, that what we get back will widen the window. And I think that's going to be the constant question that's going to be looming in the back of everybody's heads, because if you know without the shadow of a doubt that this is a trade that Nikola would sign off on, and he's like, dude, playing with this guy would be amazing. Okay, great. You make the deal. But if it's even remotely a guy that you guys would be like, man, I don't know if this is going to work, then don't even waste your time picking up the phone. And I think the Nuggets have to keep that thought going in their heads, because it's about Nikola Jokic. And everything you're doing right now is to help maximize keeping him around, because, I know you saw the rumors going around, between last night and the day, Dan. I mean, they believe that the first option is Nikola will either ask for a trade, or second, Nikola will just end his basketball career altogether and just go back to Serbia. And I'm like, well, I don't want either one to happen. And again, it's a small percentage chance that either one would happen. But I mean, if we're being realistic, we didn't think Malone would get fired at the time he did. So I think everything's on the table right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be silly of us to say that there's no chance of that happening.
Right.
I agree with you, and I said this earlier. I think the chances of that happening are very small of either one of those options. But it's pro sports, man. Things happen. And Nikola, the thing that, for me, that my reasoning of why that percentage is so small just is because of who Nikola Jokic is as a person. But it would be very surprising to me if that was the case. I do think he'll stick it out here. But again, it is going to be very important who they bring in, head coach and front office, and they have to keep that in mind. Of whatever we do needs to be with the mindset of we're keeping Joker here no matter what. So
right.
So yeah. That's going to be very important. All right, before we get into the game a little bit here tonight, KJ, I do want to play this clip of David Adelman in his pregame press conference, because I'm not going to play the whole thing. It was like 12 minutes, but here's like a minute clip. He was fantastic in his pregame presser. Here is the new interim head coach of the Nuggets.
Obviously pretty stressful for everybody. But the bottom line was we have to stay unified. I think it was a good thing for everybody to sit in the room together and realize that we have not played our expectation as of late. And that's not just the players, everybody that's a part of this. And really cool for Josh to come down, be around it, talk to the players. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind. It's another NBA moment. You deal with it. And for all of us, moving to different roles right now, 3 games, 30 games, 50 games, we got to do the best we can. And we are in the mix here. And I think people forget that. Like, they keep thinking that we didn't make the playoffs or whatever. We still have a great chance to do something special. We talked about that. The guys seem convinced. So I'm expecting a really good effort tonight.
Okay. KJ? Thoughts on what you heard there from David Adelman?
Well, I mean, he hit the nail right on the head. They had a chance to talk with the players. They handled it well. And look, again, he acknowledged it right off the top. Like, look, here's the truth. Like, things happen in this business, and it's not about what happens to you. It's how you react to it. How do you respond to it? How do you find a way to get back on the horse and get back in the race? And I think at the end of the day, that's what the Nuggets are figuring out at this exact moment right now is, okay, we got this win. How do we begin to stack another win on top of another win? Because the way it feels now, obviously, it's going to feel totally different than the wins that came in the first 79 games of the season. And so the Nuggets, I think, are still figuring it out. David Adelman, as we expected, just, full of maturity, full of class, full of grace, man, just understands the moment. His awareness is just top tier. And I think at the end of the day, if you're the Denver Nuggets, you have to keep that in mind when it comes to David Adelman, because his personality really resonates with the players. It allows them to feel at home. It allows Nikola Jokic to be the leader that he's always wanted to be. I've never seen Nikola Jokic as vocal as he was tonight. Every
drawing
play.
up defensive plays in the huddles like every time out. Oh my God. I mean, we've seen him do that a little bit before, but it seemed like every time they came back from commercial tonight, they were showing Joker on the bench drawing up plays.
And that's what I'm saying, man. He was coaching David Adelman a couple of times. I was like, goodness gracious. I was like, man, I don't know who needs to be the coach here, Nicola or Nicola, but
player coach.
Right, exactly. But nonetheless, man, tonight just showed a lot about David Adelman, and that pregame clip that you just played was the epitome of what I expected to see from him tonight.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the whole thing, I would recommend looking at it. DNVR posted it on YouTube. The Nuggets have it on Altitude's website. It was great. He talked about he called Malone, thanked him for giving him a chance. He's like, I'll keep our conversation between us, which is fair. But he was very direct. You can tell that he's a very smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
He understands the game very well. And it was kind of cool. He was asked about, you've been running the offense for 8 years now here in Denver. How's it going to be kind of coaching up the defense? And he said, I'm excited about it. He actually said at his previous assistant coaching stops in Orlando, and I think it might have been Washington. I might have that wrong, but I know for sure he was in Orlando. It was Minnesota. He said that he actually ran the defenses in those spots. So he does have, the ability to do both of those things. And man, I mean, he's been in charge of the offense, KJ, for the last 6-7 years. He's been their offensive coordinator. The Nuggets have had one of the most prolific offenses, if not the most prolific offense in the NBA over that span. So he knows what he's doing on the offensive end. And kind of what you just said there, man, I think the one benefit of really giving him a shot at being their next permanent head coach is Nicola knows him. Aaron Gordon knows this guy. They're close with him. Jamal Murray knows David Adelman. He's been there for years.
Yep.
So it will be interesting to see what decision they make. Okay. Just real quick on the game itself tonight, KJ. I think it has become very clear that the Nuggets are better with Jalen Pickett over Russell Westbrook. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about it at this point. Yep. And look, I'm not saying that they shouldn't play Russ as much as I want to say they shouldn't. Their depth is so lacking that they do need Russell Westbrook to play in the playoffs. They are going to need him. But Jalen Pickett needs to be out there with, if Jamal's not back, he needs to be out there with the starting unit. There's just no, they're much, much better. He's a better outside shooter. He doesn't turn the ball over as much. I mean, he went on a 9-2 run himself.
He sure did
in the third quarter, and it started with a Jalen Pickett steal, and he goes on a 9-2 run himself in the third quarter. And if you watched on the broadcast, KJ, the Nuggets bench mobbed him on the sideline after Sacramento called a timeout.
Yep. Dude, you know what's funny about that is we saw a glimpse of that against the Lakers about a week or so ago. When the Nuggets were down 1 million points, and then literally he was just in the fourth quarter just balling out. And he got them, he got to score under 10. For a minute there we were all like, he's doing, but we all know in our hearts they weren't going to do it. And then tonight, man, just to see the confidence that's oozing out of him in the starting lineup, that's exactly what the Nuggets need, man. They need someone who's going to play in rhythm, but also play with confidence. And a couple of things to take away from tonight. The Nuggets were looking up court for the first best pass down the court that they could find. And then they were also making sure that they were maximizing as many possessions as possible. And here's a prime example of that. Russell Westbrook still led the team as far as individually in turnovers again tonight. And so it's just like, you have all of these little moments where the Nuggets are trending in the right direction between the three-point shooting, being able to know when to execute on offense. And sure, they still had their lapses on defense, but tonight I just think Jalen Pickett brought a consistency that they needed offensively, and it showed itself in a major way. And it also allowed him to kind of see things if I'm being honest, that Nikola Jokic didn't see tonight, because there were moments where he was penetrating the lane and he was able to kick it out in a moment where I think, and this is no disrespect to Jamal or Russ, they would default to just giving it back to Jokic. But he's like, I have this defender leaning just enough. I think I could whip this pass in the corner. Or I have this defender at least cheating just enough that I think I could get this bounce pass over to Aaron Gordon for this three. And it's just like little moments, little instinctual plays that he made tonight that is really confirmed, as you said a few minutes ago, Dan. We can't deny the obvious. He is the new backup point guard for the Denver Nuggets. There's no more ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah. Well, Calvin Booth might have won that battle. He wanted him to play. Malone wanted Russ. You know, you brought up the turnovers. The Nuggets only had 7 turnovers tonight, if I'm reading this right. 7 turnovers. And Russ had 3 of them. What's the last game we didn't see double-digit turnovers from the Denver Nuggets? That's something new. And KJ, and at halftime, I thought the Nuggets were much more balanced tonight. I mean, Joker I counted he technically took 4 shots in the first half, but the last one was the, 3/4 court heave at the end of the second quarter. So I don't really count that. So without that heave, he only took 3 shots in the first half, but 4 Nuggets were in double figures at halftime. And you're missing Jamal Murray. So there are some positives to take out of tonight's game. I get it. It's one game with the new head coach.
Right.
But we've seen this in sports before, man, where a team makes a change, not this late in the season, that's new. But we have seen where teams make a change, whether it's in the front office or head coach. In this case, it's both. And, it just gives the team a jolt. And that's exactly what Josh Kroenke was talking about yesterday, was the hope in making this move when they did. So we'll see if they can keep it going forward. And the Nuggets, I believe, I'm trying to see if ESPN's counting, because the Clippers did beat Houston tonight. The Rockets didn't play anybody, so thanks a lot for that. But if this is current, it has to be current because they were tied record-wise going into tonight. The Nuggets are back in the 4 seed, and they were in the 5 seed entering tonight's game. Oh, because Golden State lost, I think.
Yeah,
I think Golden
State lost.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the Lakers won. So, it threw another monkey wrench in there.
Yeah, there's 2 games to go. The Nuggets are 1 game back at the Lakers, and the Lakers have the tiebreaker. So that's all but over. But they still have a very good chance at getting the 4 seed and getting home court advantage in the first round. These last 2 games are going to be very, very crucial. And, for as bad as Memphis has been post All-Star break, KJ, they've won 3 in a row. The Clippers have won 6 in a row. They're 8-2 in their last 10.
Yep.
Man, this is wild what is going on in the West this year. I mean, it's always been competitive for the last 20 years, but I have never seen this late in the season with so many teams, 3 through 8 still jockeying for position, all of them. And usually it's just 1 or 2. This is going to be wild. And the Nuggets' last home game is coming up on Friday against the Memphis Grizzlies. Another massive game. Massive game.
No, it is, man. And I think the Nuggets know they have a lot riding on that game just as much as they do on the game that they have to play Sunday against the Rockets. And
I'm not worried about that game because the Rockets are locked into the 2 seed.
I mean, sure, but you still need to win that game
a lot of their guys.
For your seeding. You still
I get it. But that's a game where it's like, if you're the Nuggets and the Rockets aren't playing anybody, you got to win that game because they are locked into the 2 seed. That's a done deal. They're the 2 seed. All right, KJ, last thing here before we get out of here. Christian Brown tonight, man. And really just sort of the Nuggets overall, I did think that was one of the biggest differences I saw tonight was the aggressiveness of Christian Brown. Michael Porter Jr., I thought was much more aggressive and less tentative shooting the ball tonight, which was great to see. Hell, Jalen Pickett, was he hesitating on any of his shots tonight?
No.
I didn't think so. That was something that kind of struck me. There was no hesitation on their shots tonight, and that's something I've been critical of all year, especially with Michael. But Christian Brown, I mean, my God, he was unbelievable tonight. And you know, it was cool. There was an instance in the first quarter, he swishes a three, takes another, it's an air ball, and then he takes another, no hesitation, swishes it. You know what I'm saying? So that was something that really struck me tonight of like, man, these guys are just kind of in like a don't give an F mode anymore. And we're just going to go for it. So that was cool to see.
No, it was. Dan, I know you got the stats pulled up right in front of you. Well, how many threes did the Nuggets take tonight?
They took 34. They were 13 of 34. So 38.2%. Not bad.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. I thought they took more than that. That's why I asked. But nonetheless, no, I mean, I agree 1,000% with you, Dan. I think when you look at the Nuggets and you look at Christian Brown and you look at Jalen Pickett and you look at what Aaron Gordon was able to do and MPJ and, you know, defensively what Peyton Watson was able to do, I just think there were a lot of moments tonight where you could feel the guys playing with some juice, some energy, some fire. And I haven't seen it for a while. The one guy that was lacking fire tonight, and I think it's because he kind of sees the writing on the wall, was Russell Westbrook. And he played like it. But outside of him, everybody else, man, we know what we're going to get night in and night out. Jalen Pickett, at this point, it's a matter of just giving him the experience. He needs it. He needs it, man. Like, there's no other way around it. If you're going to fully commit to him as the backup point guard, it is what it is, man.
That's kind of what one of the battles was between Calvin Booth and Michael Malone.
You know
what I'm saying?
No, you're absolutely right, and I'm glad. And again, I know David Adelman isn't trying to pick sides or anything like that, but I'm glad he has a chance to kind of establish a new line here, where he's like, "Hey, this is what I've been seeing." And I want you guys to see through my lens what I've been seeing the whole season as well. And to be honest, if we're going to have this conversation, I think even Nikola Jokic was okay signing off on Jalen Pickett because even he knows I need a point guard that's going to play more within the confines of what we're trying to accomplish in a half-court offense, not with a full-court offense mindset all the time.
And not turn the ball over as much.
And not turn the ball over.
Right. That's just the reality. KJ, great stuff, man. Appreciate you jumping on. What a weird 48 hours this has been. This team won a championship less than 2 years ago, and it feels like it's just like a whole new team. And but, you know, I am optimistic. I'm optimistic about the future. It's going to, like we talked about, it is going to be I know they will. They're going to do their due diligence on the next head coach, whether that's David Adelman or whether it's an outside hire, and same with the general manager. But they've got to get it right because you only got so much. The clock is ticking on the Jokic prime window in the Jokic era, and they've got to maximize this next, 5 years or so of Nikola Jokic. So we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. We definitely will. And look, man, the carousel obviously won't stop until they officially name a head coach and GM. But nonetheless, man, we just got to stay the course just as the players are. And we're looking forward to another playoff run with the Nuggets. We don't know what we will expect, but we'll be on this roller coaster with them because that's just what we do. And before I get out of here, Dan, let me also say this, man. 10 years, the greatest coach in Nuggets history. I want to give a huge shout out to Coach Michael Malone, man, because at the end of the day, the Nuggets do not win their first championship without him. And, say what you will about coaches of the past, Coach Malone is the greatest coach in Nuggets history, and I think he will hold that seat for a very, very long time. And I think we'd be remiss, no matter how you felt about the end, there were parts in the middle that were really, really good. And we just want to give our kudos to Coach Malone, man. He gave us some great years here in Denver, a decade. Most coaches are lucky if they make it 3 because now the death rate in the NBA is 2.5 years with coaches. And so to see him make it 10, to accomplish all he accomplished, And just to kind of see the way that he did it and the way he carried himself, I'm a huge fan of Michael Malone, and I wish him the best wherever he goes next.
Yeah, well said, KJ. You're right. He there's no question. He brought the first title in NBA history to the city of Denver. That right there, in and of itself, it makes him the best head coach in Nuggets history. He also has the wins record, but there's no doubt about it. And let's not forget, it was Michael Malone who saw the potential in Nikola Jokic very early on, and he made the decision to get rid of Yusuf Nurkic and start Nikola Jokic, and that's really when this organization took off. Mm-hmm. So truly that moment right there might have been as big a moment as any moment in the history of this organization. And he was the guy that made that happen. And you're right, man. But it's pro sports. It sucks. Malone had a great run here. I wish it could have ended with, a championship or two more, but it's the way it goes, man. And they're in the Jokic era, and they're not messing around. So good stuff, KJ. Appreciate that.
No, man, appreciate you so much, Dan, for having me on, man. And all I can say is hopefully better days are ahead. Yes.
We'll see how this playoff run's going to be. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. We'll see what happens.
Yes, we will.
All right, KJ. Good stuff, man. Have a good night, man.
Hey, man. Thank you so much, man. You too.
All right. There he goes. Our guy, KJ Granderson. Hey, the Nuggets got to win tonight, everybody. They beat the Kings 124-116 in the official Post-Malone era. I wish I could play music on here. I'd be rocking some Post-Malone music right now. But I'm glad KJ brought that up. Michael Malone definitely deserves kudos. However you feel about him over the years, or kind of how this thing ended, as unfortunate as it was, there's no doubt about it that he should be going up into the rafters in Ball Arena at some point. I don't know when that's going to happen. It'll probably be a ways down the road, but Michael Malone deserves a lot of credit for the success of this franchise over the last 10 years. And just a big shout out to him, and we'll see how this next era goes. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for the post-game show tonight. Nuggets get the win. They're in the 4 seed in the West. We'll see if they can hang on. Still got a shot at home court in the first round, as crazy as that sounds. And we'll be back coming up on Friday night. I'll be live at Ball Arena for coverage then for the Nuggets and Memphis Grizzlies. We'll see you then on In the Paint right here on Altitude Sports Radio.